Welcome back to Super Geek Girl Plays. You know, sequels are always a tricky thing to pull off, both in video games and in media in general. When you have a title that turns into a huge hit, you'd naturally want to capitalize on that success and make more of them. But with sequels, I think there's a fine balance you have to keep between retaining the elements that made the title a success in the first place and adding new elements to keep the series fresh, but might not be as popular with the fans. Sometimes you nail it and end up with a sequel that surpasses the original in every conceivable way. And sometimes, not so much. For today's episode, we're actually going to take a look at two games, Nidhogg and its sequel, Nidhogg 2. Now, I wanted to talk about both titles together for a couple of reasons, but mainly because they're vastly different from each other despite essentially being the same game, and they're both a lot of fun. So, does the sequel hold up to the original? Let's find out by first checking out its predecessor. Nidhogg is a one-on-one, side-scrolling battle royale that can best be described as part fighting game, part tug-of-war. For those of you who are unaware, a Nidhogg is a creature from Norse mythology, a fearsome serpentine dragon forever gnawing at the roots of the sacred world tree Yggdrasil, and fated to help bring about Ragnarok, the end of the world, while also devouring the rotting corpses of murderers, adulterers, and other such criminals. Nice guy! So why is a game like this called Nidhogg? Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. In Nidhogg, you and your opponent both start in the middle of a large side-scrolling arena, and your goal is to make it all the way to your end of the arena. Once you've brutally slayed your opponent, you start making a mad dash towards your end of the goal, but you won't get very far before your opponent returns, ready for round 2. And if he kills you, he'll take control of the screen, and now it's his turn to start running, until you respawn. And so you go, back and forth throughout the entire level, each player trying desperately to keep the other from advancing, until finally, one player reaches the end of their stage and emerges victorious! Oh, okay. I guess that's why it's called Nidhogg. It sounds pretty simple in concept, but there's actually a pretty wide variety of strategies you can get past your opponent, rather than just simply stabbing him to death. For example, you can actually knock your enemy's sword out of his hands, or you can throw your own sword at an enemy trying to make a run for it. If you're unarmed, you can snag your opponent's dropped sword, or engage in a brutal fisticuffs, and promptly get your neck snapped. Or you can utilize the elements of the environment around you, long grass, narrow hallways, disappearing platforms, etc., to force your opponent into an unfavorable position. And if you kill each other at the same time, the game breaks! Is it supposed to do that? I don't think it's supposed to do that. The game style is also super on point. I am in love with these retro graphics. They look like something straight out of an old Atari or Commodore 64 game. And as you slay your opponent over and over again, the entire area soon becomes awash in the colorful remains of your foes. Now, there are a few instances where it can become a little bit difficult to see what's happening, but for the most part, the game looks amazing. I know not everyone is a fan of the old school pixel aesthetic, but me, I love me some pixels. Except those pixels. Those can just go away. For me, the beauty of Nidhogg is in its simplicity. There's no character tiers, no power-ups, no OP weapons. You and your opponent are always evenly matched. The only difference between you is how skilled you are versus the other guy. Matches in Nidhogg usually last about a minute or two, but if you're up against someone of an equitable skill level, you could be fighting for well over half an hour. And a good match in Nidhogg is nothing short of exhilarating. A constant back and forth that's never truly over till it's over. Even when you're on the final screen and your opponent is just steps away from reaching the end, there's always a chance for you to gain the upper hand and push him back all the way to the start of the stage. It's a kind of thrill that I don't often get playing video games these days, and I loved every minute of it. So naturally, when I heard there was going to be a sequel, I was elated. I was all like, yeah, woo, Nidhogg 2, baby, let's do this, I'm ready, let's go! Well, this is Nidhogg 2, I guess. So right off the bat, the game turns away from that simplistic pixel aesthetic in favor of something a little different. This was definitely the most jarring change for a lot of people and is one of the biggest gripes fans have with the sequel, myself included. Hey look, I'm all for trying new art styles, nothing wrong with it, but what the original game had was fantastic. It was simple, it was clean, it was almost elegant in a way. This is just... I don't even know what this is. Okay, you remember those old gross out games and toys from the 90s? You know, the ones all about slime and goo and boogers designed to make your mother go ew. Yeah, that's what this reminds me of. And if that's what the creators were going for, then congrats boys, you did it. I'm officially grossed out. Putting personal aesthetics aside for a moment, the main problem I have with this new art style is everything is just so busy. The game has added a bunch of new stages, and all of the stages have been made longer with more screens to fight through. And to be honest, some of these stages actually look pretty cool all on their own. But then you throw in these neon-colored, janky, Homer Simpson-esque characters running around all over the place, and it just becomes too much. It is a lot harder to keep track of everything that's going on because there is so much going on in the background, the characters become lost in it all. And especially in a game like this, you cannot afford to lose track of where you are, because once you do, you're dead. The art's not the only thing that's different, however. Nidhogg 2 also adds 3 brand new weapons into the mix: the broadsword, the dagger, and the bow. The broadsword is huge and a little clunky, but it makes for some very satisfying kills. The dagger is also kinda neat because it allows you to get in close and moves a lot faster than the other weapons. But I hate that stinking bow. It's the only long-range weapon in the game, which you think would give it a huge advantage. But it takes forever to fire off an arrow, and those arrows can easily be reflected with just a single swipe of your opponent's sword. Seriously, this thing sucks! I hate it! These new weapons do add some variety to the game, which I appreciate, but the problem is, you start with a different weapon every time you respawn. Like, why? I don't want to play weapon roulette every time I die, just let me run around and stab some dudes already! But hey, at least the soundtrack's dope. In the end, what really matters is the gameplay. And in that respect, Nidhogg 2 is, thankfully, still awesome. It's still all about making that mad dash to the end of the stage while mowing down your opponent anytime he respawns. And there are still plenty of thrilling battles to be had with this game. In fact, you could go so far as to say the sequel has its own charm about it. The characters, grotesque as they may be, can also at times be kinda hilarious. And even with all the new weapons, the controls are still just as simple and easy to pick up as before. And all the strategies from the first game are still as useful and applicable as they were before. At the heart of it all, it's still the same good old Nidhogg that I enjoyed so much before. It's just got a new coat of paint. A new, slimy, gooey coat of paint. So, yes, I do prefer the original Nidhogg over Nidhogg 2. But honestly, they're both good games and are definitely worth checking out. Even with all the problems I had with the changes made in 2, the most important aspect, the core gameplay, still remained intact. So if you're looking for a fun, fast-paced brawler to play with your friends, you can't go wrong with Nidhogg. Just watch out for the... Yeah, that. Watch out for that. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of Super Geek Girl Plays. If you guys like what I do and want to see more of it, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to check out my thoughts on some other games, cartoons, movies, or anything else that happens to catch my interest, be sure to check out my blog, Super Geek Girl Report. You can find a link to the blog in the description below. And I promise I'll update it more often, guys. Sorry! And don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Twitter as well. See you guys next time. Bye!